Tonya Ladipo. Welcome to another episode of Managing Well. Today, we're going to talk about courageous leadership. And I will tell you, I have had a week full of really hard conversations. One of my company mottos that I really work hard to live by is that everything should be a win-win-win. A win for the client, a win for the team member, and a win for the business. And that when those three aren't happening, something has to change. And so those three weren't happening. And so I have, as the leader, have to make some changes. And so this week was full of hard conversations. And when I think of courageous leadership, when I think of courage, I think of risk, uncertainty, and fear. And I realized when I think of leadership, I think of risk, uncertainty, and fear. As I think about this week, I actually feel really good about it. And that feels really different for me, to really feel like I stood in my integrity, that I communicated clearly, that I listened to other people, and that I walked away feeling like, yes, like I really not only did the best I could, but I'm doing what's best. And I was considering, why does this feel different this week of having hard conversations? Why am I not racked with anxiety, racked with guilt, constantly thinking, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda? Like, why am I in some ways feeling really secure and at peace? And I realized that I prepared for this week so much differently than I have in the past. So much differently. And I'm pausing because I'm thinking of my coach and, the work I've been doing with her for years. And it's like this week was a manifestation of all of that. Of really, in preparing for the week, really for me, being able to check in with like, well, what am I scared of? I talked about risk, uncertainty, and fear. So yes, risk, yes, uncertainty, but like our fears as leaders and humans are individual to us, right? And so I'm thinking about, okay, well, what are my typical fears? Definitely fear of disappointing other people, fear of failing, fear of being embarrassed, fear of disappointing myself, which is a new one I think I added to the list, the fear of disappointing myself, as opposed to being so focused on disappointing others. And so I think I know in planning for the week I had, I talked to different people than I have in the past, which really set me up to be in a good place to have the hard conversations. And so when I say I talked to different people, I was really intentional in who I shared what with. So yes, I spoke with my business coach. I also spoke with peers and colleagues who our relationship is clean. And so what I mean by that, 100% mutual support and reciprocity. They need me, I'm there. I need them, they're there. We are cheering on each other's wins. We are holding with comfort our losses. There's not jealousy, there's not envy, like there's no second guessing of intention. And so I was really, really thoughtful of only contacting people for support who I knew were 100% in my corner. Not that they were going to tell me I was 100% right, but that I knew they had my best interest at heart. And then I even talked to a couple of people personally, so not in my profession, who I knew had my best interest at heart. And so that was a big shift, which might sound like really simple, but I think we all have relationships with people that may not fully support us. And I think when you're in those relationships for a long time, you're used to going to the same people. And what I did differently was I paused and I thought, actually, who should I go to at this moment in time? And so I really just gave myself that time to pause and not automatically get support from the same places. And my answers were different. And as a result, I prepared for this week differently. And it felt very, very different. And so I think what I wanted to really kind of talk to is when we are leaders and we have to make courageous decisions, those courageous leadership moments sometimes are big and sometimes they're small and can be seemingly unseen, but really noticed by people. So when I'm talking about having big hard conversations, that's big, medium big. Then there's the courageous moments in leadership where, leaders are on the stage and making these, taking these risks publicly. And then there are these micro moments when we are in meetings and somebody says something offensive, and the courage to push through the risk, uncertainty, and fear of, as a leader, if I say something, are people going to like me? Are they going to be mad at me? Is this going to interrupt the meeting? Is it going to derail us? We need to really focus on this, instead of pausing internally, reflecting of like, actually the courageous thing to do in this moment would be to say something, because if I don't, the impact that it has is greater. And so as we are leading people within organizations, in our personal lives, and also being true to ourselves, I think, I often talk about the cyclical nature of self-reflection and action. And so when I think of the hard conversations I had this week that I feel really proud of, it was preparing myself by spending time reflecting on my own in consultation with other people and knowing who to go to and who not to go to, and then being able to take action, I think is what made the hard conversations successful. And successful doesn't always mean joyful. But I think that's part of being a leader, is making those decisions, having the conversations, doing it with empathy and care for the other, for yourself, and really kind of learning along the way and incorporating those learnings. So I'm really curious to hear from you about times where you have had to be a courageous leader. Like, what did the situation call for? How did you respond to it? What do you wish you would have done differently? Because hindsight is always better and clearer, right? And so how can you also have grace for yourself in what you did not do, but you wish you had done? Because, as we know in life, in relationships, in business, we'll have another opportunity to have another hard conversation. So we can learn from the ones we're having now, because it's not the first, and it's certainly not going to be the last. But I would really love to hear from you what your experiences have been. Thank you for listening to Managing Well. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to learn more about today's episode, go to theladipogroup.com/podcast for a worksheet on today's episode. A special thanks to my podcast team and the Ladipo Group, who supports this show. Managing Well is produced and edited by Black Faves Brand Studio. I'm your host, Tonya Ladipo. If you have any questions or topics you want to discuss, email me at managingwellpodcast@theladipogroup.com.